everyone. I'm going to call the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Novak.
Here.
Hold on, I lost my place. Member Dodson,
Here.
Member Henderson,
Here.
Member Erb,
Here.
Member Maloney,
Here.
Member Schutte,
Here.
ex officio Member Rosenberg.
Rebecca Capular sitting in for Sandra.
Thank you. A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're on to agenda item 3, which is our opening public comment. I don't think I saw anyone signed in, but is there any beginning public comment? No.
Thank you, Chair. Denny French, Carson City. I appreciate you all being here for me. I know that sounds funny, but actually it helps to have a hands-on, boots on the ground, face-to-face with people that are really representing us and looking out for our best interest. I don't feel, however, just recently taking on more roads was looking out for our best interest. We've got a lot to cover, and I understand that the mayor suggested that some of the agreements had been made prior to your actually being able to make your votes. But it is frustrating for a person like me that comes to meeting and know how important this is to all of you to have a sense of confusion. You know, I thought we were all working at a deal where we understand that the taxes weren't put in. We don't have the money coming that was to be voted for, and we're working on a shoestring, and we have to make that money count. And I'd really like to see real good consideration as to every place we put it. And right now I'm hearing about a lot of potholes that could use some help, and they're not in the corridors that are suggested. So I would appreciate a second view at those, and I appreciate your time. I do have some concerns about perhaps I've missed something, because I'm not sure we're all on the same page as the community needs. How we handle them, we can all be different, but we've got to agree on the initial needs. And I look forward to hearing the report on what we've got going. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 4A, approval of our minutes of November 13. Member Schutte, do you have some corrections?
I do. There are 3 corrections that have already been made, but just to put it on the record, spelling from grand to grant, a spelling from emission, no emission, and then later on page 3, it says, Member Schutte did not believe that taking 10 to 15 minutes to charge batteries would be a problem, but I did believe it would be a problem. So it now reads, Member Schutte believes that taking 10 to 15 minutes. So those are the corrections.
Do you have any other corrections? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I move to approve the minutes from November 13th, 2024 as amended.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
Nay.
Somebody? Oh, okay. Just I thought, whoops, I found something else. Okay. I let the record reflect the motion was unanimous then. Oh, I'm sorry. What is, you have another question? Okay. Okay. We're on to agenda item 5A, discussion and presentation by the Nevada Department of Transportation on the US 395 Southern Sierra Corridor Study Plan. And who's going to lead us with that?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Sure.
Chris Martinovich, we have a laptop technology issue. I need to run and get an adapter unless there's an adapter here for plugging this into this machine. I have one in my vehicle. I do not have it in front of me. If we could stall for a minute or two, or your discretion, I just want to let you know I'm not able to pull the presentation up at this moment.
Who's doing agenda item 5B?
Jared is doing 5B. We
What
can do
we're going to
5B.
do is come back to agenda item 5A while you run and get what you need. and we will move on to agenda item 5B. This is also a discussion only presentation on the CAMPO Annual Federal Obligation Report, which lists projects to which the federal transportation funds were obligated during federal fiscal year 24. Jared, this is on you. See, you lost 5 minutes of your life. Let's go.
Thank you. Jared Cragen, Transportation Planner. So the federal fiscal year 2024 annual federal obligation report, CAMPO is required to annually report all federally obligated funds for specific projects within CAMPO, CAMPO's Transportation Improvement Program. As reported on packet page 61, there were 4 projects with FHWA funds that were obligated in the federal fiscal year 2024. On packet page 62, it shows that there's 2 projects with FTA funds that were obligated in federal fiscal year 2024. The federal fiscal year 2024 federal obligation report was posted for a 14-day public comment period in accordance with CAMPO's public participation plan from November 22nd to December 5th, 2024. As of currently, we have not received any public comments, and I am open to any questions.
Does any member have a question? I think I have more just a comment. I think that this is a great report. While it just says what did happen, I think the beauty of it is provides information to the public about, especially for me, showing that if you provided this match, you got this much federal dollars. For people to truly start to come to an understanding on our road funding. And so if we begin to move our match or our dollars to other projects, we then cannot bring in this federal dollar. And I just think it's important that we're reminding everyone how it actually works. And you can make those decisions. You can make those as priorities, but you're giving up something else to do it. And I think that gets forgotten in this whole adventure for a fund, of road funding. And so thank you for the report. And I hope that people use it, again, utilize it as a tool for education.
Yeah, I'd like to make one comment,
Yes.
kind of from my former life, trying to get federal projects to move when Congress does not act on time makes it very difficult for everybody. So for
Yes.
the time being, we're in fiscal 25, and they go out of business December 20th unless somebody passes a continuing resolution. So just to recognize that we do all we can here, but Congress really kind of jerks us around and makes it difficult for everybody to deliver the program. Thank you.
So, any other members have any comments or anything? Okay, is there any public comment on this agenda? Oh, wait, nope, don't need any on this one, it's discussion. All right, let's see. So with that, since it's no action item, we will then go backwards to agenda item 5A. And Mr. Martinovich, are you ready to give us the presentation?
It does look like we're about ready, just getting back to the beginning here. It's not moving.
That was the biggest stall I could do. Had a stall.
Well, I can continue to stall for a moment. So appreciate the moment there, Madam Chair. With us today are representatives from NDOT and NDOT's consultant who completed this study, and they will be taking you through this item as soon as we can get technology to function here. PowerPoint has frozen.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Wise, and I am the Assistant Chief of Multimodal Program Development over at Active Transportation and Special Studies for the Nevada Department of Transportation. So I'm going to take you through what we did for our US 395 Southern Sierra Corridor study within the CAMPO boundaries. A little more information. So the study in general, it went all the way from Clearview Lane to the California state line. So we did the entire 395 South corridor study sections from the south of Carson City here. So our goal really was to do a vision update and update the work that was done in 2007 that was out there. A lot of it was outdated, old information. We acknowledged that these are still a bunch of needs in this area, and we wanted to keep it fresh and usable for the future. So we wanted to make a framework for what our needs are now with the developments and the changes that have happened since the last time we looked at this. Some of our limitations that we acknowledge is that there's been a lot of development approval that's happened that NDOT does not have any say on. And the land use plans have changed a bit since the last time we looked at this. So it's one of the reasons we wanted to do a refresh on this. So we used a lot of our older studies. The 395 Southern Sierra study was originally done in 2007. From that, we did several scoping reports that we looked at breaking out individual projects. There's been local road safety plans developed. We tried to incorporate all those into this new study. So we had kind of a one place to get all the information we would need on this corridor. So we evaluated the existing traffic and safety concerns that are there now based off of the new configurations. There were public meetings, stakeholder feedback. We brought together a large group to really identify all of the needs for the area. So out of this, we found that we had actually completed 18 of the recommended projects from the previous studies. So that was nice to see that we had gotten some things done from our previous stuff, but we also found 88 new needs and projects that can be done.
Just a few.
And incorporated. It's just quite a few. Common, there's always more needs that we would love to have done. But we also have 3 projects currently on our STIP along this corridor. One of them is within the CAMPO boundary, a 3R project that is scheduled for 2026, which we're trying to incorporate a lot of these lower hanging fruit and things that we can do into these projects so we can have some sort of action for this. So we'll talk about how we segmented this out a little bit. And the first kind of big thing that everyone knows about, the intersection of I-580, 385, and US 50. We know this is an issue. We know that the traffic volumes are enormous. We know the movements are very challenging. We know that there are a lot of needs. There's safety concerns. There's operational issues. There's a lot of right-of-way constraints. There's environmental issues. This is not a simple problem. As much as we wish it was, it's not. It requires quite a bit of study. We developed 3 preliminary concepts to start looking at: an interchange with frontage roads, which has been discussed in the past, some concepts for dedicated limited access to going southbound and to try and separate the traffic types, and the need for alternative routes around the business core of Carson there in main Carson Street. These are all very preliminary. We'll require more study before we can actually implement any of these. But what we've done is set up so that the study can be directed and done when funding comes in for more studies in the area. The other kind of concepts that came out looking at this south portion of Carson, north portion of our study, the area of 50 and 395, there's a need for back circulation. The concept came up of doing an undercrossing under US 50, connecting Curry and Cochise to Vista Grande, and making a back circulation route that could take a lot of the traffic off of 395 that are going to Walmart and the shopping centers there. There's a project in Douglas County right now to extend Vista Grande from where it ends Topsy all the way out to Jacks Valley, which would service the Target area, that area as well. So creating some back circulation would help relieve some of the stress on Carson Street. Topsy Lane, we talked about doing an acceleration lane southbound at Topsy. That's more one of the things that we were looking at incorporating into the 3R project, something shorter term. And then we're looking at incorporating the CAMPO local road safety plan that was done. There's 13 recommendations in that for this area, so we're looking at adding those into that 3R project as well. Our section 2 is really the North Carson Valley area, so Jacks Valley Road, a lot of acceleration, deceleration type improvements. This is more of the high-speed facility connecting outside of town, making safer accesses for turning movements into the different facilities on the side. Further down, I know that the boundary of Campo ends around airport. Our presentation goes further, so we kind of end a little bit more, but we did discuss a lot of improvements at airport and Genoa, that whole intersection there, and are trying to incorporate those improvements, what we can in there, to the projects that are existing. And then we also realized that there needs to be further study with Genoa Lane. And I know that's kind of outside your boundary, but it's on the end and affects each other. So that's where we ended with the improvements for that. One other thing that came up is the future. We really wanted to look at setting us up so that we can look for future growth, future development, and acknowledging that Johnson Lane, Stephanie Lane, these areas are growing. The function of this roadway is high speed. If we want to continue that, we're going to have to start looking at interchange type options where we can separate the turning vehicles from the through traffic in a safe way. So we came up with a couple different preliminary concepts that we can have on the books to study further as money and development allow funding and stuff to come forward with that. We also acknowledge that there's wildlife issues in the area, so we need to make sure that we account for that as we develop in this area. So kind of our implementation and our next steps here, all of these recommendations are being put into the One Nevada plan for statewide prioritization that will help rank against all the other concepts and needs in the state. That's going to happen. They're being put in now. The study is not completely finalized. We're finishing the planning and environmental linkage documents still. So once that is completed, we can put all these into the One Nevada. We've already created a list for coordination with preservation projects because those are under development and design now. So we're trying to get as much of that incorporated as possible, as soon as possible. We also have a list of candidates for the STIP, which will be prioritized through One Nevada for trying to get funding identified for that. And then we wanted to recognize that we have a lot of financial constraints right now. We would love to be able to fund all this, but it's just not feasible. So what we're trying to do is set ourselves up in a way that we can go for funding when it's available. We can try and find funding, and we have a plan, solid plan set forth to present when funding does become available. So with that, is there any questions?
Oh, I just have one in general. When I'm looking at segment 1, your Clearview Drive to Topsy Lane, and really trying to read through the recommendations and then the priorities and how it really fits in with other plans that we as a city have. So I'm specifically looking at 1.6. Here appears to me to say that you're going to evaluate the need for a signal based on traffic impact study for the new development, install traffic signal if warranted. And when I look at that, and I see what we're then doing in our own side in the city, I'm thinking we're already past the evaluate stage, and we're already working to implement a signal or a traffic fix-it Appian. And so I'm looking at how it all fits together, because I don't think, it's hard. Plan 1, Plan 2, and they really all have fancy names, but is how it all fits together. Because, and this is saying near term. So what does near term mean in this report? The next 1 to 3 years?
I'm not following exactly which point you're.
Page 17 of your
Oh,
presentation? Of not,
of
of
the
the
ac-
packet presentation?
So I don't have the packet
Second.
presentation.
Oh, well, it's segment 1, Clearview
so-
Drive to Topsy Lane? Or maybe you can just answer. It
Okay.
just doesn't
So,
seem to be
sorry, I'm gonna
aligning
call Chad in on that with the.
where I think we are in the plan. I guess that's what I'm concerned about, that they don't match.
No, I think what you're seeing there is just the duration of the study, the apping, like the signal and even the Curry one, we worked with Carson City on that. And that, I mean, those ideas probably came out over a year ago when we started pulling that stuff together. So I think it's kudos that it's progressing quickly on your side. We don't like to say that you're doing it because then that kind of commits you to it. And if something were to go different with the developer, so that's why we said evaluate. And the idea with a lot of these is that it's not just NDOT, it is Carson City, it is Douglas County taking the lead on some of these, which the city, Carson City did, and they're obviously moving forward with that. And so there is a little bit of a time lag there of when we initially put it in our study, and then it, we're still saying it's evaluate, but someone takes it and runs with it. And well, then thankfully, every now and then we get one well ahead of us of where we're at by the time we get the study complete.
Okay,
Out there.
'cause I just want to make sure that that people aren't reading one plan and they're reading another plan, and yet they think all the dates are the same.
No.
And it's like, how come I have different information in different plans, but they all cover the same time period?
And that's one of the reasons we don't like putting specific dates on stuff. And to answer your second question, what is near term? Usually it's like a 0 to 5 year term, something that can be done relatively within a career. But something in the short term, 0 to 5 years is usually what we take that as. It could be easily accommodated by short range planning documents, things of that nature.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the intent was clearly, you don't put a traffic signal in unless it meets warrants.
Yes, I know, because
Ask
you
our
get
attorney, I
back
don't
up.
want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other item on the financial end, I might as well get my licks in here. NDOT agreed to build this freeway in 1986. It's not done. One reason, statewide issues, you have similar urban freeways with way too many interchanges too close together. You have 1 mile spacing. You look at the Carson Freeway, that's the way you're supposed to build them. But since NDOT has 1 mile spacing or less, especially in Reno, you're having to do ramp braiding all the time, and that adds up to billions of dollars. If you hadn't done that, we would have our freeway completed. So I just wanted to get on the record and let people realize that. Thank you.
Touche. Anybody else has anything? Okay. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I think we all knew one thing, that the dollar at the bottom end was going to be big. I don't know that I thought it was going to be 1 billion, but I was like, wow. It's up there big. But I think, again, that's an important thing for the public to understand, and the competing needs of whether you're fixing whose roads, but there's more than one kind of road, more than one entity controlling those roads, controlling dollars and what gets fixed. And it's quite interesting when you put the whole puzzle and the whole picture together of the roadway, right? So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to agenda item 5C, which is a action item, discussion and possible action regarding the Carson area Metropolitan Planning Organization's proposed transportation improvement program for federal fiscal year 25 through 28, including potential adoption of the federal fiscal year 25 to 28 tip. Jared, are you going to take us through this, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jared Cragen, Transportation Planner. So the CAMPO Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, for federal fiscal years 2025 through 2028 is a federally required prioritized list of fiscally constrained projects. With this TIP adoption, staff reviewed and update all projects, all project prioritization criteria from federal, state, and CAMPO documents and agencies to update the CAMPO project prioritization methodology. Adoption of the TIP, classified as Action 23-00, includes 22 projects. The new projects listed in the TIP include the College Parkway and Fairview Drive Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. You can find that on packet page 96. And then the Lyon County-led Chavez Road Bridge on packet page 102. Following the formal adoption by CAMPO, the TIP will be submitted to NDOT, the Federal Highway Administration, and the Federal Transit Administration for approval. The TIP amendments require a 14-day public comment period, as described in CAMPO's public participation plan. The public comment period for this action opened on November 22nd and ended on December 5th, 2024. No public comment was received, and I would be happy to take any questions.
So I just want to go to page 83, which discusses the Appian Way traffic signal and intersection improvement project. And just to be able to put on the record to be clear that this is only, it does not take us across to Snyder. It only does a 3-leg component piece, and that people recognize potentially the Snyder side will be stubbed. Am I remembering this project correctly, that it's stubbed for a developer or another interested party could come in? It wouldn't impact this because there's not federal dollars to that component, but that this project will be stubbing for that potential eventual ad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager, speaking right now for Carson City. This project for Carson City would include the construction of a traffic signal, and for the 3-leg intersection, we are building all the infrastructure for the 4th leg, including signal poles, curb returns, all the plumbing and piping underground for a 4th leg, should and when and should that one go forward at some point in the future. So this one as it is a 3-leg because that's what we've planned, that's what we've designed, that's what we've got money to build. Should we have more money, the 4th leg will be easily teed in.
Oh, that's great, because I'm very interested, or again, some other local funding could be arranged for this, but we would not have to tear any of the infrastructure we put in to put the 4th leg. I think that's
That is correct.
That's what I wanted on the record. Thank you. That, yay, we did this project and 1 year later, here comes somebody and we tear up 200,000 of it. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Does anyone else have a question or thought on a project or anything they want to? Mr. Dotson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question on packet page 87 about the flap project up Ash Canyon Road. I guess I'm a little confused about the boundary of that project. This shows from Wellington West, up to the connection there to the west. Doesn't the project go to Winnie? And
Thank you.
Is that not included in the federal portion? Is that why that's not in there?
I appreciate the question, Commissioner Dodson, and I was going to mention this during the RTC meeting as Carson City was notified that we were awarded a portion of our FLAP grant application. They have reduced the scope in what we were awarded and the funding that we were awarded, and so we have reflected in this tip what the portion at this point that we know we'll be moving forward with in the future. I will have more to say on this at the RTC meeting, but this is what the current version of the awarded project is with the federal funding that's been authorized. Well, it's been programmed, I should say.
Well, sugar. Well, sugar. We didn't get as much as we wanted there. Okay, Wes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment here, I'm really glad to see the Shaves Road Bridge in here. I know it's going to be a long time before it's done, but actually get it into a document is a very important first step. So I really appreciate you guys including that. Thank you.
Ms. Maloney?
On page 87, that flat project, the current change reason says FLAD. I don't know if you need it to say FLAP, but just a minor note.
Yeah, to match flat application. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, this is an action item. Is there any public comment on this? Nope. Seeing none, I'll bring it back here for a motion of adoption. Anybody? Mr. Dotson?
I move to adopt CAMPO's federal fiscal year 2025 through 2028 Transportation Improvement Program as presented with the edits noted.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the record. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. We're now moving on to Agenda 5D, discussion and possible action regarding certification of the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and Federal Fiscal Year 2025 Safety Performance Targets for the Jump Around Carson Transit System. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The PTASP is something that has been around in requirements from the Federal Transit Administration since July of 2019. And it requires agencies that run a fixed route complete an agency safety plan, or PTASP. CAMPO has done a PTASP since December of 2020. This year, the FTA revised the PTASP final rule, which put more focus on a variety of items, but specifically infectious diseases and transit worker assaults. So last year, I believe Commissioner Maloney asked a question about, was that final rule approved? It wasn't last year. This past April, it was approved. This PTAS, therefore, has been updated to reflect the revisions from the new final rule, both the main body of the document as well as the appendix of the document that is primarily developed through coordination with First Transit. In addition to the revisions for the PTAS final rule, the PTAS has also been revised to reflect revisions that the FTA has made in regards to performance targets. So the PTAS performance targets that are included in Exhibit 1 have been revised to include a variety of new targets that we were required to set as part of this process. Many of these targets are new, as I mentioned, and many of the targets are similar to what we've reported in the past, but they're all shown in Exhibit 1. These targets for this initial set were set based on our past experience and knowledge in these data areas for the data that we have collected, and now we'll be better collecting and focusing on many of these areas. We believe that these targets represent a strong but realistic commitment to safety, and then we believe they're also achievable for this first year. However, since many of these targets are new, we're going to continue to review these performance targets, and we can adjust in future target setting, future fiscal years. Just as a reminder, there is no penalty financially or otherwise if we do or we don't meet our targets. We're just setting targets, and essentially what happens is if we don't meet a target, we convene our safety solutions team in coordination with our contracted operator and work toward mitigations and potentially implement items specific to those targets we did not meet. Other than that, I'm happy to answer questions on the PTAS, something we do on an annual basis, but a little bit of a change this year. So thank you.
Does any member have a question? Ms. Maloney?
Thanks, Chris. Just a comment, and I made a comment last month too. I think when we have plans like this with performance measures, all of those performance measures should be included in CAMPO's monitoring report, including these.
Definitely, I appreciate that comment, and we actually included them last year's performance for the first time in this PTASP. So we're going to start reporting previous years going forward. We hadn't done that before either, so that's a new item as well.
Okay, I think for the record, what's important for me is to really talk about what the change in the report is. And so unless I'm missing a beat here, the emphasis that you discussed is on assaults on transit workers. That's something I'm guessing is a national issue that's out there. And so they want to focus on that, and rightfully so. And so if I'm looking on page 106 or page 6 of the document, so our assault rate that we're saying is a target or within a range that you expect may happen, because you can't get to 0, I guess, is 2 on the fixed route and 1 on the paratransit.
We've elected to set an assault at 2 for fixed route, 1 for paratransit. And it's important to note the definition of assault doesn't include physical components. It could include swearing at or making vulgar language to an operator. Those are non-physical assaults, and those are counted as well in the reporting. Physical and non-physical transit worker assaults.
So the assaults on transit workers are non. So then the
They're
one that
both.
is, though, is 1 injury is noted. You have 1 on the injury.
The 1 injury
Is in the fixed route.
is unrelated to transit worker assaults, although it could be a transit worker assault. It could be an injury of any kind to anybody who rides Jump Around Carson. Could
I
be an
guess that's what my
operator, it could be
question
a
is.
driver, it could be a passenger.
Any
It could be
injury.
any injury, yes.
And one of the things when I'm looking at this and I'm trying to say whether that is reasonable for us when we're setting targets. Not pretty. I think we'd like to say everything is a 0, but that's not necessarily feasible. What was last year's answer of injuries?
We had 1 injury during the course of federal fiscal year 24. We had 2 safety events.
So this mirrors what we had in actuals.
In
To
actuals.
do-
Our targets
That's really
last
what I'm
year
getting
were
to, is
0.
it's based on known quantity. Okay. So anyone else? Nothing? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back up here for a motion. Anybody like to make the motion? Ms. Maloney?
I move to approve certification of the Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, including the federal fiscal year 2025 safety performance targets for the JAC transit system as presented.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're gonna move on now to agenda item 6A, which is the Transportation Manager's Report. Mr. Martinovich, do you have some items to share?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd first like to start off by welcoming Marcus Myers, who's in the back today as our new transit coordinator. Today is day 3 for him, so I'm not putting him up here on day 3, but we will look for him in the near future. So I wanted to just note that. So welcome, Marcus. Mayor, as you know, we are continuing our coordination with Tahoe Transportation District regarding a potential route connection between Carson City and South Lake Tahoe along US 50. I have nothing really to report at this point, but we are starting to look at some numbers and potential costs and ideas. And I'm not sure where the direction's going to go, but I just wanted to keep this board informed that we are having those conversations. Of note here, we are beginning to, and we're planning to release relatively soon, a request for proposals for our North Carson Street feasibility study. So this is partially a CAMPO funded and partially local funded project to study and investigate ways to improve North Carson Street, similar to what's been done on South Carson Street and William Street, Highway 50, and now we're looking at North Carson Street as well. So starting to think about that. It'll ramp up probably mid next year and beyond. Staff completed a required submission to the FTA regarding FTA General Directive 24-1. 24-1 is a directive that was issued earlier this year related to assaults on transit workers. The FTA General Rule required all transit agencies to perform a safety assessment to assess the potential risk of transit worker assaults both on transit vehicles and at transit revenue facilities. So we did that assessment with our safety solutions team, coordinated with staff, and we've got one mitigation we're definitely going to roll out. We're going to roll out some additional sign requirements for video monitoring, letting people know that you're being recorded when you ride the bus. That transit assaults are, against the law. Believe they're a felony, and so there's some mitigations we're going to roll out as part of that general directive. And I've submitted all that information to the FTA prior to the deadline. So there was no action required necessarily by this board, but I wanted to keep everyone informed that those actions are going and took a little bit of time for us to complete. And the last thing I have for CAMPO, while I have other members here, Commissioner Erb and Commissioner Henderson, is just to say thank you for your work this year and to say Happy New Year, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2025. So thank you. Commissioner Henderson, I believe this is your last meeting as well, so thank you for your service here. That concludes my report.
Lyon County. One more meeting there? Almost done. Okay.
That concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on then to our final public comment. And so I will just echo that. And thank you so much for your service. It's been very much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have enjoyed working on this committee, and I do believe that the committee has now focused more, or realized that the western portion of Lyon County is part of CAMPO, and so we're paying more attention to that, and I certainly appreciate that. So thank you all very much.
Does any other member have any reports or anything to share? No? This has gone way too easy. Let's see what I can think of. I think that new guy needs to come up. We need to harass him a little. All right, then we'll move on to final public comment. Do I have anybody with final public comment for CAMPO? No? Okay. With that, then, we are adjourned as CAMPO, and we'll be back in 5 minutes, and we'll get RTC started. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Member Erb. Call the Regional Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schutte,
Here.
Commissioner Dotson,
Here.
Commissioner Novak,
Here.
Commissioner Maloney.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to agenda item 3, our opening public comment for the Regional Transportation Commission. Do I have any? Mr. French.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I want to encourage everyone to take a trip on the bus if they haven't recently. I haven't. I've been so busy with other matters. But to appreciate the considerations of those drivers and of the things that have to go into their planning and such, and talking about assaults. I've heard many verbals, and I've never encountered or been a witness to a physical assault. But as a person that had to deal with public in many sorts of forms, the verbal can be almost worse than the physical. And so I just like to say thank you to the drivers. Thank you for the fact that we're considering routes for the future. And that's basic comment. Thank you.
Do you have any other public comment? Come on up.
Hi, Rebecca Bustos, for the record, Carson City resident, and I would just like to express my appreciation to Greg King and his team at the Public Works Streets. I've reported a few potholes over the past few months through the Carson Connect, and they're very responsive, and Greg has even made a point that he returns my phone call personally to let me know that they took care of it and to thank me for reporting them. And it's on a personal level. I report it through my personal email, and he calls back on my personal line. And so just thanks to the streets crew.
Do I have any other? All right, then we're going to move on to agenda item 4A, which is approval for minutes of November 13, 2024. Did anyone have any changes, corrections? Ms. Maloney?
I just had one change. I noticed on packet page 9, under item 6A, it should be 5th Street, not 5th Street.
Does anyone else have any other changes, comments? Good. Okay. Ms. Maloney, did you want to make a motion for approval with your change?
Sure, thanks. Move to approve the minutes as corrected.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're going to move on to agenda item 5A, which is for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Carson City Board of Supervisors regarding the allocation of up to $456,837.20 in additional American Rescue Plan Act, otherwise known as ARPA funds, to complete one or more new local road projects and fully fund construction of ARPA District 2 and 4A project, and potential revisions to the scope and funding for existing transportation infrastructure projects, including the proposed allocation of additional federal surface transportation block grant funds. Ms. Schutte, your disclosure, please.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich, are you going to start us off?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. This presentation today covers a variety of topics, and I don't know what is going on with PowerPoint.
It's your night.
It is. There it goes. All right. This discussion covers three parts. Part one is related to ARPA projects. I'm going to provide the RTC an update as to the previously approved ARPA projects, as well as a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for the potential allocation of additional funds toward potentially new ARPA projects on local roads. Part two is going to provide a short update on our West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. And part three of the presentation will be about a recommendation for the distribution of STBG funds. I'll pause after each of these parts for discussion or questions from board members. So to dive in here, beginning with the presentation, and for the record, this presentation will be posted after this meeting's late material, as I've added a couple of maps to 2 slides. So this is a new map. It will be posted tomorrow morning. The projects, the ARPA projects, the district projects across the city were focused on local roads only. And the project in District 1 focused on Snedden, Dory, Bunch, and that area of District 1. District 2 was the Table Rock area in the Northridge neighborhood. District 3 is on Menlo Drive. District 4 is the Baker Drive and some of the surrounding streets like Landern, Pioche, Travis, Stafford. And District 5 is up in the northwest corner of Carson City, Silver Oak Drive, and Vista Way. The scope of those projects was primarily patching, preservation, and slurry seal. We're fixing some of the cracks, we're doing some patching and preservation of the existing pavement. The exception to that project was Menlo Drive, which, due to utilities, due to the condition of the pavement, is a full reconstruction. These projects came about from the Board of Supervisors, which originally allocated $2.5 million for local road projects, these ones here, and the RTC directed staff to pursue these projects back in July of 2022, one project in each performance district. Around $500,000 to each performance district was the goal. We have been working on those projects. So the status, the District 5 project, that was rolled into our other District 5 prioritization process, and those projects were completed back in 2023. The District 1 project was recently completed this past summer in 2024 in conjunction with our other District 1 projects on North Lampa Lane. Tonight, we are presenting items under future agenda items on tonight's agenda for approval of projects in Districts 2, Districts 3, and Districts 4, which include one project, which we're calling the District 2 and 4A project, and the second project being the District 3 Menlo Drive project. And so that will get us all of the 5 districts through those 4 projects. Construction on the remaining projects using ARPA funds are planned to start in early 2025. To deliver these existing projects, we need additional funding for construction inspection and material testing. In order to do that, we are recommending the use of waste management funds. In addition to delivering the construction inspection and material testing, additional ARPA funds are needed to award the full amount of the construction bid item contract. So this item here tonight is to, staff's recommendation is the RTC recommended the Board of Supervisors allocate $256,837 in additional ARPA funding for the construction of the District 2 and 4A project. Of the original $2.5 million, we were short around $256,000. And the next slide shows the breakdown of the finances. As I mentioned, in order to deliver the construction management, and material testing, we can't use ARPA funding for that. Those ARPA funds have to be under a contract by the end of this calendar year, 2024, and staff time isn't part of that contract. So we need that ability to continue to monitor the actual construction being performed in the field. So there's waste management funds, which was set up primarily to be focused on local roads, and so there's additional funding there available through that franchise fee to allocate to the management of these projects. So we recommend $100,000 in waste management funding be allocated to each of the projects. That's $50,000 each. If we don't use that, it's not lost. It'll just roll back into the pot. If we come in under, which I would anticipate we would, it'll come back and we'll be able to use it on the next project. So to summarize that financial picture of these ARPA projects, to date, we've spent around $36,000 in staff labor. The consultant who designed our projects in District 2, 4A and District 3, their contract was for $247,000. Cost of District 1 projects was $188,000 after it was constructed. District 1 projects after it was constructed was $284,000. The District 3 project, which is our Menlo Drive project, we're using approximately $892,000 of ARPA dollars. The rest of the project, as we'll see in that future agenda item, is coming from utility funds. And then the District 2 and 4A project is around $1.1 million. So that brings us to a total cost of $2.7 million. When we add in the cost of material testing, the total cost of delivering these 5 projects is around $2.8 million. The original allocation on that bottom table from the Board of Supervisors was $2.5 million. We're bringing in that additional waste management fund of $100,000, leaves us $256,837.20 short. So staff would recommend that the RTC recommended the Board of Supervisors allocate $256,000 in additional ARPA funds should they be available to deliver the full intent of the original ARPA projects. Additionally, staff was made aware that potentially there was additional ARPA funds out there. I haven't heard definitively on that, and the Board of Supervisors can make, as future meeting will let us know what's available out there. But if additional ARPA funding is available, RTC staff recommend that the RTC request additional funding to complete 2 additional local road projects. The 2 projects staff have identified is the preservation of the Hillview Drive project, which is located between Clearview and Appian. And on the map, it's sort of the green line down at the bottom of the map, right down in there. And the reconstruction, which is primarily a large patch of Lapeer Drive in the area east of Fairview, which on this map is right up in this area, this small portion of Lapeer Drive. Because the projects need to be under contract by the end of the year, we're soliciting quotes, which caps our amount that we can deliver at $100,000. So we're asking for up to $200,000 in additional ARPA funding to deliver these 2 projects, $100,000 each. As I mentioned, we are soliciting quotes, and they were due today, and I believe we've gotten a few quotes for the different projects, and we haven't reviewed them and see where we are, but we're ready to go on these if additional ARPA funding is also available. Again, if these were to be moved forward and awarded under contract, then inspection and testing of these would use waste management funding, which are going to be less of an effort than even the other ARPA projects. So that is the summary of the ARPA recommendations. Ultimately, we need $256 to deliver the prior approved projects. The 2 additional projects brings our total recommendation to the Board of Supervisors of $456,837.20. So I will pause there and see if there's any questions or comments related to any of the ARPA projects or ideas going forward for any future funding.
Does any member have a question? Ms. Maloney?
I have two comments. One on the Menlo project. I love when projects come in right about $1 million. The Menlo one was just under 900,000, and I encourage the public to drive that section. It's, what is it, a quarter mile long? And it's almost $1 million. And so when people say how inefficient government is, yes, and that's what it costs to redo a road. So thank you for that. The second, I actually had a question on the Lapeer Drive patching project. We went out there several years ago and we looked at it, and it's horrible. There's also a trailhead there. Can you describe a little bit the engineering of what we're actually patching and how long that's going to last? Because when we looked at it before, it was, this whole thing needs to get ripped up. I remember sitting in an office with Cooley and we're like, I don't know, what are we going to do? And so what is $100,000 going to get us there?
Well, I think you're correct. It's going to be a small project. And there's a number of ways we've looked at this, and Casey's been taking the lead on Lapeer Drive. But the way we kind of looked at it was, let's start at the end of the better part. And there's a little bit of a better part as you go north on Lapeer. Let's start there and let's go as far as around the corner as we can. So what we're looking at doing right now is a full removal and replacement, brand new pavement for as much of Lapeer Drive as we can get. So that's full reconstruction and new aggregate, new asphalt. That's not going to get as far as we need to all the way down the road, but this is one of the areas that we've comes up a lot, and our street crews, when we coordinate with them, are always going out there patching. So that's kind of how this project came to be on the short time frame is, yes, this pavement's terrible. It's one of the worst in the city. We're always going out there trying to patch this. Is there something we can do to get this less of an effort on city staff? And this was one of the ideas and solutions we came up with.
I think it's a good idea, and I'm glad we're investing in this section. Those residents really need the help. I think, and I've said this before, there should be coordination with Parks and Rec and long-term pursuit of some sort of maybe a rec trails grant or something to help with that pullout and the trailhead there. And if we can extend those funds and help fix the road all the way, it's critically needed. So thanks for the explanation.
Does anybody else have a question or comment? No? We're good. Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to put some more ARPA dollars to these projects as possible. So some of the other projects came in less than anticipated, and therefore dollars are freed up to be able to do that. Can't tell you where the Board of Supervisors is going to go overall, but we have to have contracts in place before December 31st so we don't lose the money. So I like these contingencies and being prepared because I want to spend every dollar that we got, and I don't want any, well, apparently we're not even going to leave 20 cents on the table here, but I don't want to leave any pennies on the table when we have such needs on our roads. And so the Board of Supervisors had allocated the 2.5. So if we have an opportunity to recommend this additional 456,000, I think it's a great idea. Again, don't know where they'll go with it, but you might know where 2 votes might stand since we sit on this committee. But anyway, I just comment that we're fortunate enough to maybe potentially have this funding come to fruition.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I'd like to commend everybody. One of the benefits of a small city is you guys can get things done quickly, and I think you've done a hell of a job here. And I looked at both of these new ones yesterday, and yeah, they do need work, so good job.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
I have, that's part one, Madam Chair, so
on this-
apologize.
Yeah, I know, I want to.
Okay.
I may even take the motion in pieces, but, okay, nothing else on this section. Okay, go to the part 2.
Okay, we will move
and
to
then he has
part
part 3.
Part
Okay,
2, and
part
Casey's
2.
going to help us with part 3.
Okay.
Part 2 deals with the West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Project. So this project, as a reminder, focuses on making pedestrian improvements on 5th Street, Mustard Street, and Telegraph Street. Limits are shown there on the slide. Primarily construction of new sidewalk as well as roadway preservation. We'll be doing a slurry seal on all these roads once the sidewalk is constructed as well. The project is in design. Construction is planned for late 2025, early 2026, pending additional environmental. This is a federally funded project, so we're working with NDOT through all that process. We've been having regular meetings with the residents. Last meeting we had was in early October. The design is nearing 90%. We're working with NDOT as they required a detailed cultural resource investigation be completed on this project, specifically from an architectural, historic architecture standpoint. Given the age of a lot of the properties in this area, and the Historic Resource Commission and the Historic District covers the kind of the eastern end of this project limit, we're doing a very detailed cultural resource investigation, and NCE, our consultant, is helping us do that. The current project budget is what estimated cost of the project at this point is 1.583. We have 1.5 million in congressionally designated spending, so it's an earmark funding from a couple of years ago, and we've programmed 276,000 in local waste management funds, primarily for match, but also for the roadway preservation component of this. We do require additional funding for this project, and staff plan to use additional waste management funds and around 77,000 for that. The additional funding is a result of the detailed work related to the cultural resource investigation. That was not something to this magnitude we were expecting when the project began. In fact, we haven't received our comments back from NDOT or the State Historic Preservation Office, so we're not sure what those final comments are going to be and what mitigations we're going to have to work in. So this accommodates what we've done to this point, and we're hopeful this is enough, but we're not finalized on those comments yet. Additionally, we needed additional staff time to complete the design to accommodate some of the nuanced and specific locations associated with driveway connections and sidewalk connections and adjustments to landscaping and adjacent to people's yards. So that's the status on this project. Looking to continue it and get it delivered. I just want to provide the update to the RTC. And again, I'll pause here if there's any questions related to this project.
Does any member have any questions or thoughts on these revisions?
Having to go through a historic area, I would hope that your survey might help us on future projects so we don't have to do it again.
Well, I was on a call with them not today, a few days ago, I think it was, related to one of the issues that we found is when they pull all the documents for the previous record surveys that were done for all these properties, they were very incomplete. And so, as is required by, I'm not an expert in this, but my understanding is required by National Historic Preservation Standards, the forms have to be updated and completed. And therefore, they're having to do more work completing the forms for these inventory than was originally expected. And so that's sort of why we're hoping that the SHPO's good with the revisions and updates that we've made. So yes, the next person who uses these, if that's us, will have the benefit of updated information.
Okay, nobody else has any? All right. On to number 3.
Okay, on to number 3. I'll start this one off, turn it over to Casey here. So just a quick summary is CAMPO has made Carson City aware that STBG funding that was previously programmed to Douglas County cannot be used by Douglas County in the time that it was originally programmed to be used. And as such, a couple of federal fiscal years, 24 and 25, have been freed up and made available to Carson City to use on projects. So the summary here is the estimated amount of STBG funding available to be programmed to projects. Federal fiscal year 25 is an estimate as is 26, as the Federal Highway Administration has not released the final STB apportionments by individual allocation. So those are our estimates based on the prior years. But essentially, there's around $4.6 million of STBG funding available to be programmed. And we're working with NDOT to finalize that number, but in my conversations with their financial management, it's going to be very similar to that. STBG funding, as a reminder, cannot be used on roads classified as local. So it can only be used on roads classified as collectors and arterials. So I think that's important to note here as well. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Casey, who's going to walk us through some different ideas for how to allocate the funding.
Thank you, Chris. Public Works has multiple projects that have a funding gap or have a large burden on local transportation funds or could use to have an expanded scope. The 3 projects recommended by staff for additional funding are District 2 Little Lane, Curry Street Complete Street Project, and the 5th Street Roundabout. The goals with the STBG funds are to utilize them prior to allowing the funds to revert to NDOT. 2 of these projects are already using federal funds and have budget shortfalls. Part of this effort is to create value improvements without creating new projects for Public Works. The first project, Little Lane, is one of the District 2 preservation projects approved in June as part of the pavement prioritization process. This project is for sections of reconstruction or preservation, working around improvements made by developers on Little Lane, followed by a slurry seal to make the surface uniform. Project cost is currently $1.2 million. $200,000 is from the Regional Transportation Fund, and $1 million is from the VNT Fund. Design is underway with consultant. Construction is expected to begin in 2026. Staff is looking into expanding the scope of Little Lane to include additional pavement and safety work on Roop Street and signal modifications at the intersection of Roop and Little Lane. This work will also address storm drain issues at this intersection and address safety concerns at a location with a higher than average crash rate in the CAMPO monitoring report. These changes will require an amendment to the consultant contract and will be discussed at a later item in this meeting. With the changes to Little Lane, we're going to propose the addition of $500,000 in STBG funds, which will cover the additional scope and allow us to roll back some regional transportation funds. The rolled back regional transportation funds will be held for potential use on William Street project or rolled into Public Works projects in fiscal year 26. The next project, Curry Street Complete Street Project, will reconstruct Curry Street south of the Shell gas station near the Stewart Roundabout to Rhodes Street and add pedestrian and bike facilities. This project has an estimated cost of $4.7 million. $2.6 million will be funded with congressionally designated spending. However, the remaining $2 million is currently planned to be local money. Local money includes a mix of RAC, stormwater, and transportation funding. Staff are actively working to procure a design consultant. Construction is planned for 2027. Preliminary engineering and construction costs for this project are going up to cover increases in bid item costs, right-of-way needs, environmental, additional earthwork, retaining walls, and stormwater improvements. To cover the additional funding needs, staff are proposing adding $1 million in STBG to this project. Local funds will still be needed to cover over $900,000 in expenses. The third project is the 5th Street Roundabout. This project aims to address capacity issues at the intersection of Fairview and 5th. This project will add circulating lanes and right turn lanes. We have $3 million in congressionally designated spending planned for this project. However, unidentified local funding of $1.8 million will also be needed to complete the project. Plans are currently at 60% design and environmental is already complete. Construction is expected in 2027. This was previously discussed at the April RTC meeting of this year. Staff proposed to use STBG funding to augment the congressionally designated spending and build this needed capacity project. This proposal would add $1.5 million in STBG to the $3 million of congressionally designated spending. The local portion would be nearly $400,000 from a future year. Staff will present to the RTC to update the schedule for this project in 2025. To summarize, we recommend Little Lane use $500,000, Curry uses $1 million, and 5th Street uses $1.5 million. The total proposed uses of STBG funds are $3 million. If all 3 of these proposals proceed, there will still be STBG funds in the amount of $1.6 million unspent through federal fiscal year 26. Staff is exploring additional applications of STBG funds in ongoing projects. STBG may be used on Carmine Street for road work affecting stormwater issues. However, plans will need to be further along to determine feasibility and extent of necessary improvements. STBG may be used on Gonai Road for the intersection of Arrowhead and Gonai. Staff will receive intersection evaluation from consultant in the coming weeks. We'll present on those findings in 2025. STBG may be used in combination with other funds to complete the Greenbelt Multi-Use Path. The Greenbelt Multi-Use Path is the project formerly the DMV Multi-Use Path that runs along the back of the DMV lot. Or STBG may be applied toward fiscal year 26 round of pavement prioritization projects. Fiscal year 26 is District 3. Staff recommend waiting to make a determination on the remaining STBG until we have more complete information on Gonai and Carmine. Staff will return to the RTC to propose uses of the remaining $1.6 million when staff have a recommendation, unless the RTC would like to provide their thoughts now. And back to Chris.
Thank you, Casey. So I'll just summarize real quick here, just all the discussion we've had in different parts. First part is to recommend the Board of Supervisors allocate, that should be $456 or $200,000 for new ARPA funding plus the $256 and the existing ARPA funding for all of ARPA projects. Staff will request, should this be approved, LPA agreements from NDOT and allocate those STBG funds to the projects identified. We'll coordinate with CAMPO on a TIP amendment, since these are federal funds and these projects don't include the STBG funds in the TIP at this time for these projects. We'll revise the project budgets and documents like the project status report, and we're going to continue to work on Little Lane and Curry Street. We'll restart the 5th Street roundabout project, and as Casey mentioned, provide an update on that project to the RTC as we get further along. I know there were some outstanding items related to state lands and things like that that we can close the loop on, and then consider the use of future STBG or additional STBG that's, essentially could be allocated to a variety of projects. So Casey, I think that wraps it up. Okay, happy to take questions. That concludes part 1, 2, and 3.
Can I go back to packet page, slide 14? I want to talk about the Curry Street project and make sure I'm reading this correctly. It indicates that the current budget is 4.68, but you're going to allocate $1,069,165 in STBG funds, and yet I'm still at 4.68. So are we rolling something else back? I'm not seeing the math. I'm just not seeing the math.
No, yeah, no, you're correct. So the budgeted amount right now is the 2.6 plus the 100,000. So that's what's currently in our budgets, if you will, for the project. We anticipate the total project cost is 4.68, which means without the STBG, we would have to bring 1.98 million in local funds or other funds from something. So correct, that's correct, Casey, right?
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Okay,
So the STBG will minimize.
I'm still missing. It'll just minimize. Why aren't we plugging the hole?
So this table here would be if we were to plug the hole with portion of the hole with STBG, then we would need 911 of local funds. So this is what we've identified as STBG funds we could plug in right now, or additional. I mean, there are additional.
But why wouldn't I plug in more STBG funds, because they're available, and free up what you were going to take out of the Regional Transportation Fund? Because that's the only fund I can do for anything local.
Sure.
So again, unless you're just seeing those, so that's just my general question for us as the team as to why would I leave 911,535 coming out of RT, RAC, and stormwater where, well, maybe I just know lots more, but where I see other things that RAC can do with its money to fill some other gaps that no other funding source exists. So I'm just wondering why you decided, or what your methodology was on how much were you leaving? $1.6 million was remaining in the STBG. So why would we not plug this gap?
The methodology.
And spend the money sooner and have it allocated.
I will definitely answer that it could be used. That is definitely a possibility. The reason we arrived at this number was because when we looked at the original request that went to Congress, that went to this board and has gone to places like the RAC and the Stormwater CIP, is that there was funding identified in fiscal year 26 and 27 out of those pots. The RAC, I think, had 600,000, Stormwater had 200,000 or 300,000. And so when we saw those sort of already programmed, we left, oh, we'll continue to make those requests. So that was why we arrived at this number. That doesn't mean we have to make those requests, but that's how we arrived at this number, was because there was already a plan in place with programmed funding using those sources with those set dollar amounts. But they're future, so they're subject to change.
But STBG cannot be used on local roads. I want us to have a good discussion here as to, so thank you for the explanation, and I understand what you're saying. Just for the benefit of everyone else, we have CIP plans that list out our 5-year, and so you're saying those were on the 5-year out things. It doesn't mean the board or anyone approved them for a funding source. It's a mechanism to say that's where we're planning our 5-year CIP. But I think that, one, it's returned money from Douglas County. It's got a date that we certainly don't want to let anything go by again. I'm getting greedy. I even want my 20 cents. So I look, if I already have a project that's out there and can be funded with STBG funds, and I can relieve RAC and the Regional Transportation Fund that can do local roads, I want to free up that money in my mind. If I'm setting all my priorities much more globally, obviously, than just the Regional Transportation Commission arena, but I think we should consider taking some of the undesignated STBG and putting it on this project to complete it. Ms. Maloney?
Just to counter that argument, the Regional Transportation Fund and projects that we fund through this commission regularly pay for needs in the stormwater arena. And quite frankly, I'm tired of using dollars that could go to roads on stormwater when there's a stormwater enterprise fund. And so that is the counter argument to why we would want to use STBG on a, I mean, Chris can talk more about it, but it's essentially a giant retaining wall, right, on Curry. And so, yes, STBG can't be used on local roads, but there's plenty of asphalt needs that STBG could be spent on in Carson and in the other counties. Because STBG falls under CAMPO. So that's the counter argument.
I'm not suggesting we take the stormwater money. I'm suggesting we free up the regional transportation money so that we have maximum flexibility to do what we think is appropriate, because that's the only place we can do that, and the RAC. The stormwater utility funding that was already put for use out of stormwater can remain, because stormwater contributes to the project's its share of the need for a particular road. We get money from multiple sources on all these that we do. So I'm not suggesting we eliminate the stormwater funding, just the RT and RAC. Does anyone else have any thoughts, or? You agree to take out? So do you have, I mean, we can play around with just the motion indicating to move the funds. If you don't have the exact, you're thinking that's 600,000 or so of that 911?
I believe the programmed amount for RAC was 600,000 was the original intent.
And the RT fund? Or just how much was the stormwater?
I can't remember if stormwater was 200,000 or 300,000. It wasn't more than 300,000 for sure.
Okay. Thoughts from the others?
I know we're kind of
Right.
getting into some of the design details, but is there any right-of-way that you have to obtain for Curry Street? Because that usually complicates matters.
The way we're scoping the project out, we're trying to minimize right-of-way takes, but there will be some right-of-way takes for this project.
It's probably with state lands.
Can I ask another question on this project specifically?
Absolutely. 'Cause
So when we did the South Carson Street project, we positioned we strategically positioned the roundabout such that eventually there could be a fourth leg connecting to Curry there. It's not drawn on the map. I'm inferring it's not part of this project. Is there anything that you can say about whether or how this project changes that future connection?
Sure. The roundabout design, the fourth leg, was something we contemplated and discussed heavily with the United States Forest Service. And they were not willing to provide Carson City that easement to connect that. The changes to Curry Street were relatively small. So I think we can still position whatever results from this project to accommodate that fourth leg should that ever happen. Fingers crossed. But yeah, we'll be ready for that one.
But the fourth leg is in the land spill. Just, we never give up, right? You got one no, you go to another source. So, but this is all for the Curry Street side, not the roundabout side.
Yeah, none of this funding would be to construct that
wanna make sure,
leg, but it's going to be on our minds when we're designing this to not build
Yeah,
something that's
traffic
going
go all
to
the
make
way
that
through.
not function.
Right. Okay.
I did want to note, if I may, Commissioner,
Certainly.
Chair Bagwell, is that this project was one of those projects that RAC had identified early back in 2020, 2021, when we did these parallel route assessment. The RAC funded a study for us to look at Curry Street, to look at Roop Street and Silver Sage. And this is one of the areas that was identified as having some needs. And so that was another reason that RAC funding was identified as part of this project, just as additional background for this commission.
I completely understand, but there also wasn't the money from STBG available when RAC funding was potentially considered for this project. And so I just know there's limited activity we can do in RAC, and I know we have some major projects coming forward that could very well benefit from the $600,000. So I'm just, sorry, I got multiple hats on, but the reality is I have multiple hats on. And so I just think when I try to make everything work and you've got your big picture on, you're saying, okay, how do I still get this project to move forward, but potentially how do I get another project that is short a little bit of money, and now I can win on both and get both projects accomplished. So I'm super excited. I'm not sure why Douglas County was so magnanimous to give it back, but very happy that they did, because it might let us do a little bit more on the projects we'd like. So potentially, so maybe we just say that we would fund an extra $600,000 out of STBG funds. Does that work? And so that would leave you 311, 535 out of the others.
Yeah, up to you all for which funds, but that's fine for staff.
Okay, so plus 600. So 1.169. Oh, I can't even do any math my own self. We're in trouble. Okay. Does that make sense? What I'm suggesting is that we just move 600,000 in additional STBG funds to District 4. So that'd leave you $1,018,068 for future use to come back when some of these other projects come to more fruition. Does that make sense? Great.
Mayor Bagwell, I don't want to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
In one of your comments earlier, you seemed to indicate that the RAC had flexibility, the RAC money had flexibility potentially to be used on local roads. Has there been some discussion that can be shared here, or some information on whether or how
No, I
those
said
RAC
on other
funds-
projects.
Okay. So it wouldn't be potentially used on roads?
No, it would not.
Okay.
Now, RAC could help. I don't want to pretend that RAC doesn't have the opportunity to, we've worked on a local sidewalk before in the redevelopment district. So there are other things that RAC has done to help in some of this, but usually like it's pathways in Mills Park, or we've done sidewalks, little things like that that we can tag on. It's not the project that I have in mind that RAC could use the money for. It's not for sidewalks that we typically help you with. And so I'm not going to share what it is on this meeting, but I just know RAC could use more money.
For me, I guess I sit on this commission only, and so, you know, we're telling the public that we're 21 million a year short in roads, and so I don't know that I can vote for that action.
It's fine. It's fine. But again, okay. Ms. Schutte?
I just have a question about the Fifth Street roundabout and the land acquisition, and so how is that coming along in terms of the design?
Well, we haven't engaged back again since we put a pause on the project back in April. So, you know, if this money were to move forward, we would start that conversation again and see where we are with state lands. This design that we have here basically fits within our right-of-way and our easements that we have out there. And I know there was discussion of we could make the project potentially a little less expensive by shifting things around. And we just paused at that point when we paused the project. So that's part of the reason we want to provide an update at some point.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on the Fifth Street roundabout, I'm curious, the plan, you know, depends on this congressionally designated spending. Is that, when is the announcement of that projected?
I think your guess is as good as my guess. We heard positively that it was included in the fiscal year 25 congressional budget, but as Greg alluded to during the CAMPO meeting, Congress hasn't passed that budget. So when they do, we're hopeful it remains in there.
I guess there's no danger in moving forward and without that being authorized.
Yeah, what we would do with this particular project and this particular fund is we would start again using some local dollars, which there is still some regional transportation fund needed. We could program a little bit to get it advanced to the point where we understand the right-of-way. We're not going to advance design, but we're going to understand, let's get this right-of-way stuff sorted out. Before we even advance the design any further, we want to know where we're getting this congressionally designated spending. And we'll probably even wait on submitting our formal request to NDOT to obligate the SDBG funds to this just for a little bit, just to see how Congress acts with this funding. So we have a little bit of time on this one, a few months probably to ask, before we have to ask NDOT to get those funds going. It's going to be for construction only. So we're going to really focus, which is the congressionally designated spending as well, all construction only. So there's not a urgency in getting that funding moving right now. We have a little time on this project. If that was a long-winded answer, I apologize for that, Commissioner Johnson.
Okay. And maybe I don't even mind telling you potentially is, again, RAC is used for Mills Park, but it also covers the area of our courthouse. And we have requirements that we're going to have to do at the courthouse, whether we like it or not. And so I want sufficient funding to make sure the courthouse project can be completed. So, and RAC is one of the only places we can go for that. They don't have a dedicated funding source at all from anywhere. So I'm really looking hard for what I can gather up for dollars for the courthouse. So just because she asked. Anybody else? Anybody else have comments? Okay. So we'll go to public comment on this. Any more on we took it on the first section, but is there anything on STBG or the other discussions on this item? Mr. French.
Thank you, Chair. Denny French, Carson City. Caught me on Curry. I don't know, the development there probably required a traffic use review. And were the developers hit up on any of that as far as their contribution to the changes needed, or any contributions financially towards those new considerations? And then I also a little concerned about all the acronyms, all the different things that you're talking about are way over most of our heads, even if I've been following it as well as I can. And I'd appreciate also have to recognize yourselves again when you do get up so that people listening know if they don't get to see who's talking, who is. And also, I just appreciate the fact that they did do some actual environmental studies on some of these, which is great. The historical part is great, but without also the consideration about the environmental, we've got a problem. So I encourage that whenever possible, and more so than when it's possible or when it's required. I think we should start requiring it more. Thank you very much.
Have any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back up here for a final discussion. So the only amendment I would like to make is to move 600,000 of unallocated STPG funds to the District 4 Curry Street project, and then relieve the Regional Transportation Fund and RAC Fund. So just increase the STPG. That makes sense. And I'll even be happy to let you conform those to the exact numbers when you look up the spreadsheet, in case I'm 1,000 one way or the other. The objective is to leave you with the stormwater utility paying its share of the project, if that makes sense. So I'll say approximately 600,000. We'll go that way so that you can conform
Understood,
it.
focusing on leaving stormwater and rolling back the other funds.
Yeah, and like I said, that way the Regional Transportation Fund could potentially go to a local road, which we can't do with it.
Staff would leave enough for match. We would leave enough for matching funds.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to point out, it hasn't been mentioned yet, but Curry Street was identified on the local road safety plan. So I don't know if there's any chance of getting safety money in this project as well, but I think you guys should try to pursue that. I know you have other safety projects you want to try to do, but, you know, in your discussions with NDOT, it's probably worth bringing up.
Yeah, I think we're all working really hard, you know, to Miss Maloney's point, anywhere we can. I just want to free up money that can be used to local roads if I can. And so if I have an opportunity, we don't have it very often. Like I said, thank you, Douglas County, for freeing up some money for us. This is, we're happy to accommodate this. So is everybody, are we ready for a motion?
Well, I just wanted to add, I appreciate that Carmine Street is listed as a focus and a priority, because I think it is essential that we figure out a way forward on that. So that whatever money is remaining, I would love to see that go toward Carmine and fixing those issues.
Well, and is Lapeer is considered a local road, right? Just over thought process. I'm probably overthinking it all, but.
Lapier's a local.
Well,
road.
I'm just saying, could you then, because I'm going to free up money on Curry Street back to the Regional Transportation Fund, could we indeed then do some more on Lapeer? Because I'd have more local money available.
We possibly could. I'd want to make sure I look at the source
At
of
the-
that
yeah.
regional transportation fund.
And you
yes.
could bring that back to us, but again, just moving the pot around to try and get more on that
Correct.
road's bad. So I think if we could extend it a little bit, it would help. So just throwing that out there. I don't know how much was in RT, so another 100,000 though would take it twice as far as we were gonna go. So, all right. Anybody else? Then we'll take a motion. You know what you're doing. Do you still have
Sorry.
another question? I'm sorry.
You had made a comment earlier, Chris, about the way we bid it was to keep it under a certain threshold so
Oh.
we could bid it with quotes, right? So we can't
Oh.
make it bigger.
We could not exceed 100,000.
I'll jump in. Yeah, it'd be hard to expand the scope of that beyond 100,000 because that would trigger additional solicitation requirements that we would be unable to meet by the ARPA funding deadline.
Oh, I'm
But I-
not suggesting at the ARPA deadline. I'm suggesting when he gets all said and done, you may make another
Maybe another
project next year.
If it's an entirely separate project.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But he'll have to do all that fancy stuff first to figure it out. But it's just the example I'm trying to show is it would free up money for a local road. That's what I'm trying to get to, because we don't have a lot of those. And we don't have a bunch of ARPA that ever comes our way either to give me that opportunity. So, okay. You ready? Mm-hmm. Oh, do you want me to do it? Okay. I move to approve the revisions to the existing projects as discussed and move to recommend that the Board of Supervisors allocate up to $456,837.20 in additional ARPA funding for the ARPA District 2 and 4A project and the new Hillview Drive and Lapeer Drive pavement preservation projects with an amendment to the STBG funding allocation to move $600,000 to the Curry Street project and make the appropriate changes to the other funds.
I will second that.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Let the record reflect it was 4 yeses and 1 no. Okay, thank you. Great. Mhm. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 5B. This is discussion and possible action and agree regarding Amendment 1 to Contract 253-00250 for DOWL LLC to provide additional design and support services for the District 2 Little Lane Rehabilitation Project and increase the contract by $389.40. We can't forget our pennies for a new total contract not to exceed amount of $451,706.40. I think in the future it should be our 10% to the closest dollar, just so we don't have, anyway. Just got to laugh about this. Okay. Casey,
I think you pretty well covered it. Do you have any questions for me?
does anyone have any questions on this project or anything? No. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll accept a motion, please.
I will move to approve the amendment as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We'll move now to agenda item 5C, discussion and possible action regarding a determination that Intermountain Slurry Seal is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder pursuant to NRS Chapter 338 for the ARPA District 2 and 4A pavement preservation, and to award contract 253-00285 comprising a base bid plus 3 additive alternatives for the project to ISS for a total not to exceed $1,107,990 with the exercise of the project's additive alternates contingent upon the additional funding being approved by the Carson City Board of Supervisors. Does anyone have any questions on this one, Casey? Just a hope. Hope the board loves us. Yeah. Okay. Nope. Any other, anything extra you need on the record?
I just want to point out that this project used a 15% contingency, and this contingency was selected to maximize the use of ARPA dollars. And that was all.
Instead of 10. Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, I'll accept a motion. Miss Maloney.
I move to award the contract as presented with the exercise of additive alternatives contingent upon board allocation of additional ARPA funding, to authorize the district attorney's office to make any changes needed to the contract's compensation term to conform to the board's ARPA allocation action, and to authorize the public works director to approve expenditure of the contingency if necessary.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those Noes? We'll let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're on agenda item 5D. Discussion and possible action regarding a determination that FW Carson Inc. is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder pursuant to Nevada Revised Statutes, Chapter 338 for the District 3 Menlo Drive ARPA Improvement Project to award contract 253-00286 for the project to FWC for a total not to exceed $1,784,460. Does anybody have a question on this project? Miss Maloney?
I just have a comment that items 5B, 5C, and 5D are construction jobs to 3 different construction firms, and I love when we're able to spread money around, and it shows that different firms have different strengths and can be more efficient on different areas, and I think that's really cool. So I was pleased to see that.
Anybody else?
I just had a comment or a correction, and I think it was pointed out, but on page C18, the date should read December 11th. So the contract acceptance and execution, that first paragraph, it lists December 5th. So I just wanted to clarify that.
That is correct. And on that topic, there's also on packet page 169, the project number is incorrectly stated as P303-524-008. It should state P303-525-008. And also, this project, similar to the previous one, uses a 15% contingency, and we did that in order to maximize the available ARPA funding.
Okay, so this one, the contract will be as amended on the record for date and contract number, correct? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll accept a motion for the contract as amended.
I move to award the contract as amended and authorize the Public Works Director to approve expenditure of the contingency if necessary.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5E. Discussion and possible action regarding contract number 253-00262 with Ecolane USA, Inc. to provide software and support services for Jump Around Carson's paratransit bus service, Jack Assist, for an initial term of 3 years beginning January 1, 2025 and ending December 31, 2027, for a total not to exceed amount of $65,346 plus two-year options to extend the contract for a total not to exceed amount of $42,506 for each option, and allowing the purchase of an additional SMS text message notification. Boy, that word did not want to come out. Bundles for a not to exceed total of $6,000 for that, resulting in a grand total contract $156,474. Lisa, may I have your disclosure, please?
My nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city staff presenter on this item. My disclosure and analysis from item 5A applies here as well. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his city service, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other Carson City resident. Therefore, I have no disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting.
Does anyone have any questions of this contract for Mr. Martinovich? Mr. Dotson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious about the totals that are shown in the bid amounts. You know, as part of the on page 224, the little table there. Why are they different than what's in the contract?
Yes, thank you. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. So the original scope of work that was provided and that the consultants proposed on is shown there in the table. The consultant we selected, Ecolane, also had an optional service to continue to provide the SMS text notification to riders of Jack Assist. And so we opted to continue that as an optional task. And so the additional $7,739 per year is on top of the base services listed in that table. So that was an optional task that wasn't required at the time of bid, something we elected to add on.
Does anybody else have a question? And you've double checked all this math?
We've double checked and triple checked it, yes.
Okay, I'm looking at Adam because I'm sitting here in my mind, okay, that's 13 times that, times this, times that. Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Mr. French?
Thank you, Board Chair. Denny French. On the text message, SMSs, and that 6,000 goes towards that, or it's a bundle of cost of 15,000 each bundle. Can you define a bundle and then original text? Is that an automatic message notification, or is that independent? And since I don't have a fancy phone, all of this seems a bit above my head, but is this inner business or inner departmental, or is it to the public?
To the public.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Do I have any other public comment? Okay, I'll accept a motion. Okay, Mr. Dodson.
I move to approve the contract as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5S, discussion, F, as in Frank, sorry. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of the cooperative purchasing agreement between the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission and the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services to permit the RTC to join the DES contracts with bus manufacturers for the purchase of transit buses for Jump Around Carson, and authorization for the transportation manager to execute amendments to the agreement, revising the non-binding estimates of purchase. RTC anticipates making and other provisions that do not substantively modify the RT's rights and obligations under the agreement. Ms. Schutte, your disclosure, please.
My nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city staff presenter on this item as well. My disclosure and analysis from items 5A and 5E apply here. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his city service, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other Carson City resident. Therefore, I have no disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich, can you give me a little bit of explanation about the authorization for the transportation manager to execute amendments to the agreement, revising non-binding? What are
Yes.
your anticipations of
So-
that? Because it's an out.
If you were to refer to packet page 286, there is a table under number 11, the scope of participation. This table is required at the time the grant or the agreement is executed as to our estimation of the number of vehicles we're going to purchase. Maybe we're only going to purchase one. Maybe we're going to purchase 3 or 4. So the amendment is authorizing me as the transportation manager to revise this table and to allow us to purchase additional vehicles under this agreement should we elect to do so.
And Adam Tully, Deputy District Attorney here. I'll just jump in real quick too. The idea here is the state of Washington, when they enter into these contracts with vendors, it often has a maximum number of items. You know, you can only buy, 70 heavy-duty buses through this contract. And so this is why the state of Washington, when you enter into this agreement, requires us to give an estimate so that they can track, how many units are being purchased through this vendor, and making sure that they're not exceeding the limits that the state of Washington and the vendor agreed to at the outset of the contract that we would potentially be joining. So it's not a binding thing, but it's an estimate that they require so that they can do their own diligence, making sure they're not butting up against their limits.
Does anybody else have any questions? Ms. Maloney?
Can you tell us a little bit more about the buses that would be purchased under this contract or agreement?
So the agreement with the state of Washington allows us to join their variety of contracts with different contract operators. We've been focusing on Gillig, but they also have contracts with Bird. They have contracts with Model 1, Creative Bus. So they have a variety of contracts that we could select from. The buses we've been looking at and considering out for Gillig are 30-foot long diesel-powered buses or potentially diesel hybrid buses, depending on what's available. So we've been targeting that 30-foot range. That's similar to some of the more recent buses we've purchased for fixed route and shorter than our current pushers by about 4 feet. So they're rear engine, two-door buses, but slightly shorter. And Gillig is one of the few manufacturers that makes that size. And they've received rave reviews from all the agencies who've used them. But this particular agreement only allows us to join so we could purchase from Gillig or any other vendor currently under contract with the state of Washington.
Does anybody else have any questions? No? Is there any public comment on this item, Mr. French?
Thank you for your patience, Chair. Denny French, Carson City. The discussion on what kind of buses and what sizes of buses is still in the works. The Washington company does need to have us give them a sense of what we're considering, how many buses and how many of those are going to be hybrid as opposed to full electric, and then or straight diesel. The 30-foot come in the size such as for electric as well as for the hybrid, or is that hybrid only? And so this is still like you're figuring out how much you're going to be spending on it. And those prices are going to depend on electric, diesel, or hybrid. So there's a lot of information I didn't see. So I haven't had a chance to look over this, quite frankly. But it's one of the things that's on my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martinovich, this does not provide you the authorization to make the actual purchase. This is the agreement. You'd still be bringing back the bus details for purchase.
Correct, Madam Chair. We would have to bring back a contract with the vendor selected as well as the purchase for those actual buses what are selected, yes.
This just lets you have access into this.
We can
as one
now,
of the vendors that you
executing
may
this allows us to call and get some prices going.
get in and exercise this. If you find something more price appropriate, you can go with a different vendor. We're not bound to purchase only from them.
We're not bound to purchase only from Gillig, no. Any of the vendors currently under contract.
I'll make sure.
Then Chris, to clarify, there's no cost to signing this agreement. This is just.
There's no cost to executing the agreement.
Okay. With that, I don't think I had any other public comment, but just in case. Okay. I'm ready for a motion then. Okay. Ms. Schutte.
I move to approve the agreement as presented and authorize the transportation manager to execute amendments to the agreement that revise the non-binding estimate of purchases RTC anticipates making and other provisions that do not substantively modify RTC's rights and obligations under the agreement.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now on to the transportation manager's report. Mr. Martinovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. I wanted to start, and what I alluded to during the CAMPO meeting was the award of the Federal Lands Access Program grant. Carson City a couple of weeks ago was notified that we were awarded, I believe it was $5.3 million in federal funds through this program for a total project of around 5.8 million with our local dollars included in that. I will need to confirm that number, but it's around there. The project, what they indicated is we requested, I believe, around 7.3 million in federal funds. They have authorized less than that, and as doing so, they have reduced the scope that they would be willing to fund at this point to the limits as shown back in the CAMPO item 5C, which would include, begin at the end of Ash Canyon Road and go up to the new trailhead location and construct the parking lot. There is still an opportunity for us to coordinate with Central Federal Lands on the scope of the project. The plan would be that they are going to come out sometime in early 2025. They're going to meet with staff, and we're going to do a field visit scoping walk to finalize the scope of the project. And there's opportunity for us to, revise this, add additional funds, see if there's additional federal funds available. We know that it won't be less than this, but maybe there's more than this available in the future. So that's the status of the project. We are working on a letter to finalize all of that, and that'll be coming forward in the new year going forward there. So, multiple questions, Madam Chair.
Chris, has it been decided yet if federal lands will take the lead on design, or will Carson City take the lead and save some money?
Well, we requested that we take the lead. Federal Lands indicated they'll be taking the lead.
So we tried again. We got told no.
Ask again.
Yeah, Ms. Maloney.
January 20th, okay.
Worth a try, thanks for asking.
Yes.
On the reduced scope, presumably the match coming from Regional Transportation Fund will be reduced since the scope on the road is reduced, and the match from open space will remain the same. Can you confirm that?
I can't confirm that because I don't have an answer to confirm that yet. I think the scoping meeting will tell a lot of what we need to do. I have a suspicion that in order to solve some of the stormwater issues, we're going to need to actually come back down the road a ways, and that could necessitate more roadway reconstruction than Federal Lands anticipates here. I also think that 5.8 to fix that very short section of road is a lot of money, and we've already started coordination with Parks on how can we reduce the size of the trailhead? Are there opportunities to save some money with the construction of that and pull that back into the roadway side of things? So I understand your comment, and I think it's just a little too early to know that answer yet.
For me, I think we want to make sure that the utility as a road is preserved. The road dollar utility is preserved and used on roads.
Fair enough.
I know there's an expectation of that from the residents, and maybe that warrants an additional item at RTC in the future.
Yeah, I hear you. I have nothing more to add. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay, so we will move on to.
Oh, sorry,
You had
Madam
something
Chair.
else.
I
I'm
had
sorry.
something,
Thought you were
no more
done.
on that particular flap item. I was going to apologize there. On William Street, I want to give an update to this board on William Street. Our city engineer and our project manager has been really focusing on getting the right-of-way complete. We're nearly there. Fingers crossed, we are going to get that project out to bid in early 2025. We're targeting, before March is our goal here. So we'll get that one out to bid so we can get that to construction. A couple of properties left, and then we're ready to go. We've also been coordinating with the Washoe tribe in the area of Curry, South Carson, in the Carson Colony area on Oneida Street. We're doing some work for them, some geotechnical work, so they can use some of their tribal funds to do some road work in that area. So we took the lead and spent a couple of $1,000s to do a geotech investigation so that they can scope and design and build one of their projects in that area. So just wanted to provide that background. There's coordination with the tribe going on. Also, that per a previous agreement that was approved by this commission, we have completed installation of additional battery backup systems at traffic signals here in Carson City. This is per an agreement with NDOT where they purchased the equipment and we were installing it. So they're on primarily NDOT related roads. So new battery backup equipment has been installed at the interchanges at William Street and I-580 and the interchange at College Parkway and I-580. We've also added additional battery backups to the I-580, US 395, US 50 intersection, so that when the power goes out under those NV Energy warnings, that signal is going to continue to operate as that is probably the highest used traffic signal in the region. The other intersections, those are those single point urban interchanges that have those long turning movements and are kind of weird to drive. We want those signals to operate if the power goes out. So that's where the battery backup has been focused, and we've finished those installations. And the last thing I wanted to mention is if you go to the movies, pay attention to the pre-movie previews. Safe Routes to School has rolled out some movie promos in the movie theaters here in Carson City. So they're cute little few second spots there. That was done through some of the Safe Routes funding. And so look for those next time you go to the movie theater. And with that, I'm conclude my report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item 6B, which is the October street operations report. Mr. Martinovich, is there anything on this report someone would like to highlight or ask more questions about?
I have nothing to add on to this report. I will say that this past month, street crews have been very active and very busy, getting ready for the upcoming storm, as well as installing a lot of the Christmas decorations downtown. So a lot of work for them and a lot of work, as always, from our street crews.
They do an excellent job. Excellent job. Anybody? Anything on this one? Okay. We'll go to agenda item 6C. And this is other comments and reports. And so I want to bring one up just because I happened to get it in today's mail. So I thought, I'll just do that. I happen to be going there tonight. So Mr. Stressman sent me a request for us to look at the intersection of DeSoto and Airport Road. He thinks a stop sign is necessary there, that it's really a bad visual problem for traffic. So I'd like you to, if you can, look at a warrant or whatever on that to see. You may have already looked it up and be able to contact him, tell him you looked at it last year or the year before, but I've had a request from the public for that. And then he also wants to report, that he has what he thinks are roads that need to be fixed in his area, very much like the rest of the community. But I wanted to acknowledge that I received his comments and he'd like you to look at them and see if there's anything street operations or anybody can do on some of his reported ones. So I'm moving that from my desk to your desk. Was that pretty good, huh? Does anybody else have anything under this agenda item to share? Oh,
If
great.
Casey does have the
he's got
project
some-
status, if that was.
We'll go there and after I'll get anything that anybody here has and then we'll go through the report because he's got a good one.
Sorry, where's DeSoto?
Over near the animal shelter. So you got that part of Airport Road and then DeSoto. Yeah,
Got it. Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, anybody else have anything? If not, Casey, take us through the projects themselves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Casey Sylvester, Transportation and Traffic Engineer. All right, we're going to go through each of the active transportation projects. The first project is Roop Street Rehabilitation Project. Consultant design is underway.
Casey, on
Yeah.
that project, I think the limit needs to be updated, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe you are correct that we extended the limits up to Caroline Street.
That shows that the project length is 0.2 miles. I think it's more than that now.
The project length does need to be updated. Sorry, Chris Martinovich, the project length will get updated. The limits on the map are correct. The length on the table is probably too short.
Okay. Thank you. District 3 East 5th Street Reconstruction Project. Construction is complete. Release of retention is expected in early 2025. East William Complete Streets Project. A couple things to note on this one. The total budget is listed in error as 23 million. It's actually $26,664,358. The design is complete. Utility agreements are finalized. The right-of-way phase is expected to be completed during December. The city will advertise the project for construction bids in early 2025, as Chris noted.
So why did the project balloon another $3 million?
This was more an error on my part based upon collecting the total sum of the budget for the project and listing it on this sheet. It was a clerical error, or
Oh.
my error.
It didn't sum it. You had, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
There's some background stuff that goes on with these sheets, and it's taken care of, though. Carson City Multi-Use Path Improvement and Rehabilitation Project. The project has advertised. Bids close on January 7th, 2025. This is the project that was formerly the DMV path.
It was simple for it.
Appian Way Traffic Signal and Intersection Improvement Project. The 100% design plans are complete. Project documents have been submitted to HUD and are in review. Construction is expected in spring of 2025. District 5 Winnie Lane Reconstruction Project. Construction is complete. Retention is expected to be released in January.
Can you go backwards on the
Yeah.
Appian? Because just really ties in all the reports and things we've discussed today, but we have no issue from putting a light in there that we're going to cause more traffic backup. I'm only concerned, and I look at everything, and so one of my least favorite roads to travel in Carson City is College Parkway, because I feel like there's an intersection intervention every time my car wants to move, it turns red. But I just want to make sure we've really studied this and it's the right move, because when we were talking earlier tonight with CAMPO, they said we were going to have a traffic study in theirs, but we're already way down past what that said. And so I'm just, like last chance, everybody agrees that this is the right answer for Appian, because it's got a lot of traffic that's coming through Highway 50. That's a lot of traffic.
There is a lot of traffic through there, and I'm confident that between James Jacklett and his team and myself and working on coordination that we're going to be able to make this signal fit in, and I don't want to say seamlessly, but we'll have it fit in well so that the corridor is able to work. Municipalities across the country have faced trickier situations than this, and we'll be able to work that out.
You'll be able to time it to not turn around and back traffic up even worse.
That's what we are anticipating, that we will be able to handle it.
Okay, you're on the record. I'm being honest, I have reservations. I don't want to say I'm super excited, but I'm going to trust you.
There are
You're
some
on the
tricky
record.
things because of the way the spacing is and things like that, but I think we'll be able to take care of it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, District 5 Winnie Lane Reconstruction Project. Construction is complete. Retention is expected to be released in January.
That turned out good.
West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. Staff will complete 90% plans by June of 2025. A cultural resource investigation is ongoing, as Chris alluded to during the CAMPO meeting, or earlier in this meeting. Public outreach continues for the project to discuss improvements with individual property owners. ARPA District Pavement Improvement Projects, 2 contracts pending award at this meeting, talked about earlier in items 5C and 5B. Construction expected to begin in spring of 2025. This project form will be revised to reflect the breakout of projects. Carmine Street Rehabilitation Project. Consultant design is underway. Staff participated in a site walk with the consultant on November 21st. District 1 North Lampa Lane Preservation Project. Construction is complete. Retention is expected to be released in January. District 1 College Parkway and Airport Road Pavement Preservation Project. 90% design is expected to be completed in January. Staff has been coordinating with property owners for ADA and drainage improvements. District 1 Gonai Road Paving Project. Staff is beginning in-house design. The geotechnical investigation is complete. Intersection evaluations with consultant services are ongoing. Presentation of results of intersection evaluations will be made to the RTC in early 2025. FTA Rack Downtown Sidewalk and Pedestrian Improvement Project. Construction is complete, retention has been released. This project will be removed and $6,692 of RAC funding will be returned to the RAC Capital Improvements account. District 2 Little Lane Rehabilitation Project. Consultant design is underway. An amendment for scope expansion to include signal improvements and a portion of Roop Street will be considered at the December RTC meeting. We talked about this in item 5B. District 2 Stewart Street Preservation Project. The design is just beginning by city staff. District 2 Fairview Drive Preservation Project. 60% design is in review. District 2 Fifth Street Rehabilitation Project. Consultant design is underway. And the North Lampa Multi-Use Path Extension Project. In-house design is underway. 60% submittal is expected in April of 2025. And the Curry Street Complete Streets Project. Staff is preparing a consultant request for proposals for preliminary engineering. Any questions?
Ms. Maloney?
If there was extra STBG in the future, that Fairview Drive Preservation Project could be an opportunity to release local funds and use STBG funds. That road was constructed, as I understand, with some federal funds, and it has all the sidewalks and stuff on the side, so that might be something to look at.
Does anybody else have any comments on that?
Just a couple of comments. The project report is fine, and it looks like, depending on how the retent turns out, we're going to get some more money back. So thanks for that. But a couple of things some of you may have noticed. I went through the roundabout at Stewart and Carson, and that art does not impede me at all. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the second draft or the latest draft of the Carson City Master Plan is out for comment now. So I would suggest everybody take a look. And yes, there's a comment about finishing the freeway right in there. But take a look. There's quite a bit in
Wonder
there.
where
And I
that comment came from. Oh, no.
I made a lot of comments, but I think staff has done a really good job. There's a lot of good transportation items in that master plan. So thank you.
Perfect. Any other members have any comments, thoughts? We've done good on this one. Have we covered everything? It's a big agenda item that's broad. Okay, with that, we will then go to final public comment for RTC, Mr. French.
Get my frequent flyer deal. Denny French, Carson City. I appreciate the fact that you're acknowledging public comments that have come in that relate to each of the items by person. I think that's very important. I think it will encourage others to go ahead and contribute. Meetings like this, I've been asked, how come you keep showing up? Because I don't have the ability to watch it on television or on computer. Also, I find it very important to have the face-to-face opportunities to get the feel for the situation. And when I come up with a question, to be able to at least put it out there. If it can't be answered, it might set a seed of somebody saying, hey, if Denny's out there having that question, I'm sure at least a few others do. And even if it's just a matter of misunderstanding, that still is a question out there that people don't get done. They'll go from that misconception into other thoughts. And I think getting those cleared up as soon as possible is really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? No? Okay. Well, then we are going to adjourn and everyone have a very Merry Christmas and stuff because we won't see each other before again. So thanks for your great work. Good job, team.